Welcome to the place of rest, where our aim is to give you language that helps you displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease of our times. My name is Jonathan Boyce, and it's my pleasure to bring to you today's episode. Virginia and returning guest Katherine Dang emphasized the importance of truth and reason in debate. We hope you enjoy today's conversation.
Katherine, thank you for joining me today.
Well, I'm happy to do that always.
Something significant has shifted in the landscape of the political discourse, I should say for sure. In terms of government direction, regulation, control, and restraint, everything's always consistent and we can bank on that. But the political expression of that, something significant has changed. As you know, we have launched the R.E.S.T and Recover First Responders Program, where we're meeting the growing challenges, mental health care challenges of our first responders. And this year we have a gala, and the theme is Rest and Recover America, cognizant that even the strong grow weary, but those who rest will renew their strength. Central to rest is our commitment to displace the growing confusion, chaos, and dis-ease, whether it's in the spirit, the soul, or the body of the individual. And that commitment goes on to their primary spheres of influence, of course, within their own conscience, their family, the church, the state, those three divine institutions, and everything in between. And it became painfully clear this week, as it has been for many years, but something about this week, and this isn't a right or a left issue, Republican or Democrat, it's just a human condition issue, that conversation is essential to reconcile the confusion and the chaos and the disease upon us. And that requires dialogue. And dialogue often in specific spheres gives way to vigorous debates that are essential and necessary for us to reason well. And listening to opposing sides and hearing vigorous debates causes us to respond as individuals, not in a uniform way, but as individuals to the reason that's put before us. And I just think this dialogue is essential. This conversation with you, a historian, a scholar of primary sources that has really tracked the character and conscience of humanity throughout generations since the beginning of time. You have volumes in ancient and early and ancient texts. You've written several volumes on history, and they're comprehensive. So I'd like you to speak to what is happening, number one. And number two, how are we going to help heal?
Well, we understand that the argument of the definition of debate has been perverted in the area of intellectual scholarship. A debate is not just conversation, but it's reasoning together. And it all starts with a premise. If your premises are weak, then your conclusions are going to be faulty. And so what's important to understand is we argue from a premise. And this is where we differ in our premises, our foundation principles. And it's all right to have differing principles, but it is a opportunity to reason together our principles and to present them with their logical, reasonable conclusions, cause and effect. So we turn debate into warfare, into challenging aggression and personal, shall we say, personal attacks. So we've lost our character that receives differing expressions of ideas or different ideas, in fact. So what we see in Charlie Kirk is a return to the right idea of exchanging premises, exchanging causes and effects, and reasoning together. We've lost our ability to reason. That is the fault of the lack of training we've had in home education, public education, church education. There's been a decline and a degeneration universally, internationally, in developing the mind, the spirit, and the the soul of man. And when there's chaos, confusion, and uneasiness in those areas, which is the internal aspect, it will affect everything around us in our body, our society, our relationships. And so the healing of that, shall we say, degeneration is in what you are endeavoring to do and others in the same vein to restore the life that is in us, not the life expression of the violence. We have violated ourselves by not being aligned with, not being properly aligned with what is good and true. And this is a battle inside of us between what is good and what is evil. And unfortunately, the confusion comes when those two are married or when those two are joined together. And that's where confusion is, where life and death are joined in one union. And we need to divorce ourselves through rest, through the principles of rest, the healing process of separating ourselves from that which is evil. And again, I want to define evil as anything that destroys and leads to destruction and even death. That's evil. Evil that destroys innocent life is the opposite of what is good. Good is what promotes life, and you have to reason. Do my ideas that I engage in, that I believe in, that I stand on, that I'm convinced of, is it life-giving? Or is it violating something in my body or in my spirit? Is it destroying relationships, natural relationships? Is it destroying the order or the easiness or peace of mind? Do I have peace of mind? Because there is an attack on that area. Evil will attack and violate. Violence is destructive, no matter what form it takes. And so truth is absolute. It's universal, by the way.
Before we leave that theme, can I just make this very practical and you correct me if I'm wrong or expound on this? But the greatest evil we experience is the evil we commit against ourselves when we violate our conscience.
Exactly.
So a violation of conscience is the greatest evil we commit against ourselves. And we know when we violate our conscience because we don't feel good about ourselves.
Well,
We don't feel,
so much
we sense it's a violation right against ourselves.
Well, why is it violation? In the sense that universally, if there's something we understand as self-evident truth, we are one humanity. We come from really one bloodline, in a sense, humanity. So truth and goodness is absolute. Death has variations of the same theme. And when we are not standing or understanding what truth is, which is good, which is life-giving, then we are, shall we say, walking away from that which is life and leading to ourselves into some destructive path. Now, I want to say also that we choose. We have a will, and we can either reject what is self-evident and detract ourselves and convince ourselves that we have no agreement with self-evident truth until it has to be cultivated, it has to be rehearsed, it has to be confirmed, it has to be engaging in conversation, in affirmation. And that has been lacking in our society, in our circles, is reviewing, reaffirming what is self-evident. It goes without explaining. It goes without having any debate. It's known to us, and our conscience knows that. And when we go against self-evident truth, whatever form it takes, then we are at ease. We're not at ease. There is that feeling of condemnation, and it's a sense, yes, but it is disapproval of ourselves. That's what's important. There we seek approval of society, but the most thing is, are you approved by your own conscience? Are you miserable with your decisions?
So people on both sides of this position and how they're responding. I think most human beings, and I believe this to be completely true from even people that were not in agreement with Charlie, are saddened, deeply saddened and mortified. The natural response
Right.
of a human being
Yes.
is deep sadness, regardless of the position you take on who Charlie was or what he wasn't.
Or on
What is natural
any death, on anyone.
right, any death, anything that diminishes life. It's
It's
a
a loss
sad,
of life.
it's a loss of life.
Somebody has lost a loved one. Someone has lost a brother, a father, a relative.
That is natural. And I think this conversation is really important to me because I want our listening audience to know that more unites us than divides us. What is natural by and large, even to people that I disagree with and they disagree with me on political, philosophical, religious issues, we can both hold in this space the fact that a great loss is piercing all of our hearts. And I
Natural
think
to avoid death in any form. And it's sad,
exactly.
but this is what
And
what
and we mustn't get sucked into a false narrative.
yeah, but what's false, what's true? We have to know what is true and seek the truth. And we've been passive to the truth. I think what we have experienced too is that we've waken up from our coma. We've been numb and dumb. Good people have been numb and dumb by the conditioning of modernization, you might say, that has made us unfeeling when anyone is hurt or violated against, except Charlie Kirk was a publicly known international individual who can truly be seen as doing good. He walked his talk. People saw that. He was consistent. Had convictions. I mean, convictions means he was totally convinced of what he was presented as truth. The light he was given, he was convinced of it, and he had the confidence, which is courage, to speak it, to tell it, to reason with somebody, to see if there is any who would know what he knew and gave him joy, gave him peace, gave him a happiness in this life. Life, liberty, and happiness is absolute. It's not relative, simply because there are things that don't change in their actions. That's what people are seeking for because we were all born with that life, liberty, and the pursuit, the capacity for happiness. But
Well, I think that was the universal appeal of Charlie is that he did love life. He did advance the cause of liberty and he had fun doing it. He was happy.
he knew the source of that too. It wasn't
Oh, of course.
his own making. He believed that God, who made us all, gave us the means, the path to life, the path to liberty, and our own personal happiness. See, God is not a God of force. Liberty is given naturally to every human being and not to be imposed upon by the will of another. Not even God will impose his will on us because he gave us that nobility of choose. And as the Joshua in the Bible said about himself, as for me, just me alone and my family, as the leader of my home, we will serve, we will obey what God gives us as true, as being true. That was his conviction. And he's not imposing that on anyone. That was the point. He was not attacking anyone or even.
That's not how a large percent of the population felt. And this brings us back to what is debate. I think there's a misunderstanding, which was your opening point,
But they
what
don't
debate
want
in
to
fact
debate.
is.
They don't want to debate because they reject the premise that man is created in the image of God and that he gave every man life, liberty, and happiness, and that we are all products of our environment, not in products of our own choices and decisions. And they don't like hearing a Charlie Kirk because they say it's hate speech because they hate hearing it. It makes them uncomfortable. It maybe convicts their conscience that
What do they hate hearing?
they hate hearing that they're responsible for their own choices. Nobody can make you angry. You choose to be angry or you're offended, but that's your decision to take offense. You see, we take offense. We don't have to pick up the offense. And that anger only breeds more anger until it's violence to yourself. Anger is violence to yourself, and it acts out in violence to others, everyone around you, cause and effect again. And the fact that we are not governed, we can't govern that anger. We have no power over that anger. It overwhelms us. And it just,
Explain how anger is a violence to self.
well, it is. What do? Your blood pressure goes up? My blood pressure doesn't go up because you're angry with me. Your blood pressure goes up. The chemistry, you release chemicals and chemistries. Your brain does certain things, and your whole body reacts to what you feel, what you think, or your emotions, because you will it to be so. And we are soul and body. Man is, that's why rest is so vital to understand. Rest tells us that we are living souls. We're not just body. The body will age, it will end up in the dust, but the soul goes on. And that's what Charlie Kirk talks to the soul. He was trying to reach the part that is confused, that is at dis-ease with truth, self-evident truth I'm talking about, universal truth.
Yeah,
And
at the end of the day, his aim in all the discourse was to help peel back the layers of a person's soul so they could examine themselves
but there's a
and
connection
their worldview.
to our soul and our policies. They're not separated. The reason he is so contemptible to some is that what he did, what he taught the young people, what they listened to, because he was one of them. He started at age 18, a high school student, and he dropped out of college because he taught himself a reason within himself. Wait a minute, and I'd love to use your line. Somebody's lying to me. I've got to find out what is true for myself. And he came to it. It was like a pearl of great price. And he said, I've got to I want to tell this to the people like me, my age, my generation. I know what they're going through. They're going to inherit a lot of debt, a lot of lies. And I want to give them something to think about. And because they're not getting it anywhere. They're not even getting it in their churches. They're not getting it in their family life. They're not getting it from their grandparents. Why do they flock to him? Because they never heard it before. Why? There's something evil occurring inside our families, and it's a generational thing. And so he actually came to that conclusion and walked and lived and showed and demonstrated it in his peace, in his joy, and his love for wife and children and his priorities. And it comes out in policy. You can't separate what is happening in you with what is happening in our nation. We're the cause. The national consequences show up. Government isn't the cause. Policies is not the reason for things. What we see in policies and politics is a consequence of what's happening inside the soul of our nation, the souls of our nation. And we need to reach that inner part. And we've been pill hopping and whatever you want to call it, church hopping, to find that relief and that grief inside of ourselves. We're dying. We're a sick country, not only physically, because of the choices and the deception. I won't say we're all 100% liable, but I would say deception, half-truths. There are a billion lies, because lies can come in different forms, but there's only one truth concerning every area of life. Rules. The path to life is very narrow. There isn't many million ways to do something. No, mathematics is only one right answer for every problem. 1 + 1 will never be 3. Never. Unless you change the base, which is you change the source and origin of mathematics. But mathematics doesn't lie. Numbers don't lie. And your body doesn't lie. Tells the policies tell us who we really are. Don't go about saying, that's not us. Yes, it is us. We have to own it. Beginning with our own physical, personal property, which is your body. What's in then your relationships.
Mark your calendars for a night of impact at the Rest and Recover America Gala on Thursday, October 9, 2025, at the stunning Villa Tortorella. Join us for an unforgettable evening, a gala celebrating our first responder community and supporting the efforts of Rest and Recover America as they provide life-changing mental health services to first responders. There will be a dinner, special guest speakers, including our keynote speaker, Hedia Miramati Falco, and a silent auction. Tickets are limited, so don't wait. Secure your spot today at the link in the show notes. Together, with your support, we can directly strengthen and expand our mission to restore well-being and renew capacity to thrive for our first responders. Join us for a night of hope, celebration, and giving back. Get your tickets now.
I believe we all bear responsibility and opportunity, and we all bear the privilege of stepping into this conversation and being a part of a beautiful, transformative season. I think great things are before us, but we do have to examine some of these deep ideas that we wrestle with within ourselves. But before we can even do that, we have to become aware and understand that that's what's happening within us.
It's been coming along. The good things have been coming along all along. It just didn't happen overnight. And Charlie
That's right.
Kirk is a reflection of that. There are other Charlie Kirks all over the country. They're just not visible. And that's okay. But
And they're on both sides. They're on both sides of the conversation. I want to incorporate that too.
There's only one side.
That's right. There's the human race. There's us.
Yeah, there's just one. There's not many self-evident truths. This is the beauty of the thing. But there are those who reject, because you have the liberty to reject, and those that receive. You either receive it or reject it. We're all personal individuals and responsible and receive what comes from those decisions. So we're very unique to each other, each person. That's the response. That's what we avoid many times, self-responsibility. That we can blame the devil, we can blame mom, dad, we can blame teachers, professors, but it comes down to your will and your choice, your decision, the conscience. And you keep a good conscience by, shall we say, not violating it, not going against what you do know is good, not what you don't know. It's not, sometimes our mistakes are from ignorance, but what you do know is what you're responsible for. And sad thing is many know very little, only because they've been denied the truth. But you can seek your own, because we have the capacity to reason for ourselves. Even toddlers reason for themselves. Whether they reason one decision or another, they do. Because we're born with it. We're at ability to reason, but we've been avoiding or denying or rejecting the evidence from reason. So, what's the home is the beginning of learning. Okay, what are we learning from beginning? And again, we go back to education in our nation, and I believe families, parents have surrendered their responsibility for the education of their children. And that began early in our history, and we've been declining ever since. Providentially, we have individuals other than some that didn't do that, and that cultivated in their home the knowledge of absolute truth and natural affections. Charlie Kirk walked with all 7 natural affections, and he didn't mince words about it. He just folded and he declared it because that's he embodied it. He loved God. He loved the Word of God. He loved God's creation, nature, what was natural. He loved family. He loved learning. He loved liberty. He loved others. In fact, the word that seems to come to the forefront of his character is that he loved. He had no enemies. Now, others make him their enemy, but he didn't make an enemy of anyone for himself against. And that's the beauty of his Christian walk.
I want to interject at this juncture, too, that we need to examine ourselves and how we encounter each other. Because if we look at each other as enemies, we are conflicted within ourselves, and there's things that we need to reconcile and step back and reason deeply about the conflicts that lie within us. Because it's easier to see everything and make judgments about everything outside of us. It takes a lot of strength and courage and discipline to look within.
We avoid looking within, like looking at the mirror to see the flaws that we see. But honesty requires that. Otherwise, we're lying to ourselves about who and what we do, what we say and what we do, and deflect. That's part of being human nature and being weak. But in humility, we need to do that. And love, the aspects of love your neighbor is forgiving all the time. Just forgive. I think I watched Charlie Kirk debate or discuss, and he took every opposition and received it, taking no offense and loving the individual, not making that individual his enemy, though they were enemies of maybe the ideas he had. But that is how I think God is. God isn't an enemy of anyone, but many people make God their enemy. And that's the difference between God and man. God opens his heart to forgive, but there are many who reject even God, and that forgiveness required when we offend and bring offense to the Creator, to him who loves us. So we love those who don't love us. We love our enemies. That's what Jesus taught. And that's what Charlie Kirk did. You can see it.
And when we're humble about our own condition, I think there's a measure of humility
Absolutely.
that we can show up to these conversations with.
Pride says resist help. Pride says, I'm not willing to be helped. I don't need that help. I'm okay. And
Pride says resist. There's just resist conversation, resist ideas, resist everything. Pride makes it almost impossible to be curious and ask questions and be quiet enough for let somebody answer the question you just asked them.
or listen.
Obviously,
Let's listen. Just listen.
right.
We don't have to respond. Just listen. But we have to be mature in this whole process of living and giving to one another.
And for those that say, well, he didn't, right, but the very thing he advanced, he didn't do. Well, in a forum where there's a debate, that's a little bit of a different structure. I think there was an effort and a desire to at least begin to make us all comfortable with the necessity to engage in difficult conversations. But obviously, when you have thousands of people or hundreds of people and you enter into these heavy discussions and big topics, that's a debate forum, which goes back to your explanation of what is a debate.
Yes.
And so we need to understand these points of engagement. When I talk to my children, I don't want to debate. I want to show up with curiosity and engage them. When we meet our friends we don't necessarily need to engage everybody in a point of debate. What he did was debate to ignite conversations. And I want to just make that distinction because I think that's really important.
Well, understand something. When I listened to and watched some of the videos, they came ready to trip him up. They weren't debating. They wanted to throw
Right.
a curveball. They wanted to irritate. They wanted to provoke. They could not debate because they had no premise. Right? They just came to bring him down or somehow prove him wrong. That's what he called his whole tour, prove me wrong kind of a thing. And he invited that challenge because they would come challenging him. Debate is not challenging. It wasn't reasoning. He asked them to reason. And when they were stopped and unable to reason, that's when it all got kind of off the rails. But what I watched also was not that individual that was, shall we say, coming forward to prove him wrong, quote unquote, but there were crowds listening, and he was not just speaking to that one, he was speaking to the crowds that were listening to his answers. And I know there were many who were hearing and receiving what he was saying. So he wasn't just, and that one allowed many to listen and hear Charlie teach. Charlie was teaching, and that's how you rule, is you teach.
I think I want people to listen to this. I'm not trying to make a case for one thing or another. I just want people to know how much hope and how much instruction and how much life can come out of what we all accept as human beings is a loss. And in our own ways, we do recognize the loss and we recognize something's shifted. I think we have an opportunity to show up with curiosity for each other. I'm hoping we can begin to show up with curiosity for each other's opinions.
There is a new generation coming, and it's wonderful to behold that it was coming along all along. In his death, many are coming forward, and more curiosity has been.
Yes.
38, maybe 50,000 or more are wanting to open chapters, new chapters.
Is it 50 now?
Now it's up to 54,000, I think. The inspiration he gave, his death brought life, or shall we say, inspired life, because he was life-giving. It's just that because of his loss, then we don't want to squander his gifts.
And that's when you know there's truth. When the life of somebody who has the strength and courage in whatever field, whatever industry, whatever discipline, to really live with conviction and integrity to advance the cause of truth, you know that at least you can become curious about that thing when it multiplies exponentially in ways that are not natural to man. And somebody is advancing a culture of death, a narrative of death, the exact opposite happens. Because at the end of the day, the truth is a living thing and it can't be destroyed. And it is compelling to it is compelling to man. It is compelling.
If you have a surety of what's true, you're not afraid of any lie. And we welcome speech because we're not afraid of the lies, whatever it is. I don't care what side you sit on. If what you have is true, you should never be afraid of what you think is a lie. But I see fear all along. All this is coming out of fear, and they don't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it. I think of the stoning of Stephen in the scriptures. It said that they shut their ears. They were gnashing their teeth. They wanted him to be silent. They didn't want to hear it. They hated his words because it convicted them that they were against the truth he was speaking. And
if we're honest with ourselves, when we've engaged others, relatives, families, employees, spouses, and with pride and without love and selfish motives and ambition, and we walk away from those encounters, we feel the same thing. A measure of shame, even if we...
Exactly. Even children, you can see it in children. It's so clear. But the shift you're talking about is a return. You call it turning point? I think it's returning to reason, to rationality, rather than to emotional opinions, which are not true. Opinions are not necessarily true. The foundation of opinion needs to be true. The basis of that opinion has to be true. And you have to dig, is my opinion based on anything that has light or truth or life in it? You see, we have to analyze ourselves, self-reflection, reason within ourselves. What do we consider an idea, but does it have any root? Does it have any basis of that? That's all. And he had a basis for his ideas. He could always support his ideas with reason for himself. And he just spoke what was in him, not what he's told, what he came to understand. And he's teaching what he understood for others to have the same light that gave him life, liberty, and the happiness he showed every day.
The encouragement you give to everyone listening, besides what we're living through, is the drama of man throughout history.
And
there's been many Charlie Kirks throughout history that have
truth
lived.
prevails, no matter when in history. It's consistent. And so I want you to understand that good is God, and God always overrules evil. Always. Because he is the definition of good. And that's what Charlie taught.
I just talked to Dr. King yesterday. I did an interview with him, and he deals with, he's with energy, the vortex of energy and the spheres of energy within the body. And he literally broke down the science of this very conversation, and that will follow our discourse. So I'm excited for people to hear the science of what you just said.
And true science
is beautiful.
It's true
science.
And
Totally.
what you do in rest is you address the soul of men, and you're healing, helping to heal the soul that's broken, that is splintered and is full of ignorance. And you bring them back to align themselves what is evident by reason. It doesn't matter what you are or where you come from. And that's universal. And I enjoy knowing that rest does exist because there's so much brokenness in our families, in our businesses, in our nation. Our nation needs healing. And when we think about healing, it means restore to health. And I appreciate the policies that are coming up that are protecting life, protecting liberty, and going back to the principles of our nation that protect life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for every individual, not just for a portion or a party. No, every single individual. America is not an experiment. America is a miracle. And it's a miracle based on truth. And these will never die. But the lies will die over time. We need to shun them and turn back, if we go, to what we know is true. What we know is true intuitively, paternally and maternally. But deception is very subtle. Fraud is very subtle. very crafty and keen, and we can be seduced away from it. We have been seduced away from. They're half-truths, they're partial truths, they're completely untrue. It comes in different forms, different ways. We've got to be wary. We've got to be aware not to follow the lie and check to see if it is a lie. Do your own work.
Whatever side you find yourself in, I just want to remind us all there is no side. There's a human race. We're in this together. Communication leads to communion, leads to the healthy exchange of ideas that are essential to ultimately do what we all value. And that is fundamentally, and what we all need and desire is to advance life. Regardless of all the other noise, that is fundamentally the desire of every man. It's to live free. I was listening to one of his clips where he said, our forefathers created liberty. And I said, they didn't create liberty. Liberty is woven into the anatomy of the soul of every man.
Yes.
And when the constitution of a man begins to break down, that liberty becomes impotent and you can't secure freedom. And that's what's happening. Charlie dealt very much in a political realm and engagement in the external, and that's what he was called to.
Yes.
And he invited people to reason about the internal function of that. I kind of start with the internal function of the discussion of liberty, and I cause people to help them understand the consequence is freedom. So we did the exact same things,
Right.
but we took different
And,
approaches to it.
he had a certain level, and that was important, that level. And now we have to follow up and continue and build up because, he did the first important work, but now the work has to be more specific, and the science of rest is the answer to the sickness, the fallen soul, the confusion, as you say, and the lack of peace and the broken relationships that come from that. But
I like that. The science of rest is the answer
to the sickness of our souls. Even, you can be a Christian and have a sick soul. I'm sorry, right? It doesn't.
Oh, they do.
Because we've married ourselves with evil. We've been entangled with evil, and because we haven't done our homework, okay? We've been lazy, we've been numb and dumb, we've been relaxed, and now there's a wake up now. We've been woken up by this loss because it's so widespread, and that's good, and it's international, which is wonderful, but there has to follow through now, okay? I don't want to die.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to happen. I think we're ready.
It's happening.
To do that.
Yeah. No, it's happening.
I'm hearing signs of it in my own small sphere. It's and there's a real division. It's a good division between good and evil. There's no common ground between good and evil. No common ground. Division between who's on and who's off. Okay? Do you understand?
Completely.
It's the right kind of division. Good and evil are not to be married. And now we have to divorce ourselves because it's killing us. It's killing us, this compromise, this middle ground.
Yeah, this is an important thing. Good and evil in our day and age
is clear.
Good and evil have been married.
Yes.
And there needs to be a divorce.
And that was on purpose. That's the work of evil, is to marry the righteous, if you want to put it that way.
If there's anything I've grown to understand, there's been a marriage between good and evil, and now we see that they can't coexist.
Exactly. And that's where our nation is. It's a clear cut today.
Yes.
It made the division very clear.
No, I agree. Katherine, thank you so much.
We hope listening to this episode has brought you closer to experiencing the freedom of wholeness and healing. If you have questions or comments about today's episode, or for updates about REST, please visit our Instagram or Facebook at The Place of Rest. If you would like more information about Virginia, or to support and join the cause of REST, please go to theplaceofrest.com/donate, or call 949-289-5935. Thank you for listening to Rest with Virginia Dixon. We'll see you next week.